Hello, testing. All right, it looks like my Yeti microphone is good, but I do not want to trust that my second microphone is going to work just yet. No, it should. We'll probably be fine. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the December Rust Gamedev Meetup. And so this is something that we run every month to get people from the community to come and show off what they've been working on. This is an opportunity to get shoutouts for the stuff that you've been working on. So if I see what people are working on in chat, I'll make sure to mention it. And also just an ability, like the ability to be able to talk with other people who are working in the Rust Gamedev ecosystem. And so, for a little bit of clarity, this is the Rust language and not the Rust game. Even though we will be talking a lot about game development, but I just like to make sure of that every month. But yeah, so with any shoutouts, I'll just put them in either Twitch or Discord or YouTube. It'll all come to the same chat for me, and I can say what people have been working on. And so today we got several show and tells from people to show off what they've been working on. So I'm definitely pretty excited to hop into it, and we'll be back in just a few minutes with the first one. All right, hello everybody. So we are here today first off with CW Fitzgerald, aka Connor, who's going to give us another update on Ren 3. Oh wait, sorry, just half a second. I feel like my some things or the audio's not going through. Let me just figure that out quick because I think I messed noise torch and where is Discord output? Should be going to there, and Jack input client. All right, say something again.
Testing.
Hey, perfect. Looks good. You were good to go.
Yeah. All righty. So, welcome. Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever. I am CW Fitzgerald, and I'll be talking about Ren 3 0.3 again. You know, was supposed to pop in later, but whatever. So, what is Ren 3? It's a 3D rendering library built on top of WGBU. It's designed to be easy to use, customizable, and as efficient as possible without sacrificing the ease of use of the API. So, first is the bad news. I mentioned last month that I was going to release 0.3 in a couple days. It has been an entire month, and it is still not out. So, at the very beginning of 0.1, I set this idea. Oh, I'll just release every month. I release on a cadence. Companies do this. It's a fairly standard thing. And it worked for 0.1 and to an extent for 0.2, but basically it burnt me out. Every time before the release, I would be like crushing to try and find to try and get the release out, whatever. Not a great idea. Highly don't recommend it. Like, it's good to not sit on releases forever, like, continually adding features to make sure you're, have a point where like, okay, I'm going to cut the release right here. But doing the I'm going to cut it like once a month before the game dev thing doesn't work very well and was very bad. However, because of that, it is way, way more polished. I am so much happier with the APIs that are going into 0.3 now than I was a month ago. And I'm going to go over a couple of the ways it improved. There are plenty of bug fixes as well. I have some shout outs for people who really helped me squash some of these bugs. So before I get into this is going to be a very much less like presentation, a lot more like just showing you stuff. So before I get into all the showy stuff, I want to talk about a thing that is arising among the 3D Rust graphics, the people who are working in the 3D space in graphics. Ren 3, is it rafx or rafx? Bevy, we've all had discussions about trying to get a common 3D test scene, something that actually like tries to. Sorry, I looked at the chat and I got all messed up. That basically something that we all could use that has a bunch of rendering features and allows us to freely distribute it so that every engine could use this one test scene as they're like, hey, it works. So there's Amazon Lumberyard has a scene that is actually CC licensed called Bistro. It's available from NVIDIA Orca. I'll drop a link in the chat a little later. As the FBX. And it has a wide variety of features. It is real art. It's real 3D art. Lots of point lights, lots of realistic geometry, lots of occlusion. These are all very good candidates for a real-life test, not just like a test that's throwing as many polygons on the screen as you can. This is like real, what people would actually be using. So it's currently being spearheaded by rafx. Rafx? Yes. Rafx is a charisma. He'll talk about that a little later. But the end goal is to have the scene imported into Blender accurately so that once we have a Blender scene, every engine can export it however they want. I know Rafx has its own exporter, or if you're exporting to GLTF or to whatever custom format Bevy dreams up, we all will have a common source that is accurate. And Blender is very extensible, so it's a very good base place. I will caveat this next thing. This is not my rendering. This is a rendering using Lumberyard. This is an example of what the scene looks like. I will show it off in Ren 3. It will look a lot less pretty. So it will be interesting as people start adopting the scene, seeing as they grow into all the features that the scene requires to render it accurately. So now I will get out of this presentation, and here is the page for the Bistro. I'm going to just drop it here. And we will get on to actually showing you this. Let's hope this works. There we go. Look at that. It's beautiful. There we go. All right, so this is the scene as currently rendered by Ren 3. Things look pretty good. There's some issues with normals, like the shadowing was having some fun over there. And this is
just a recommendation. If you want to, so if you pause for a second, then the Discord compression will make it look better.
Oh yes.
So yeah, go to like a picturesque location and then show us.
Okay, let's show in here. So this is actually the combination of two different scenes. They actually have both an indoor and an outdoor scene, and but this isn't actually the blend export from the blend file Eclipse was working on. I did this separately. But this is just like I combined them and rescaled them to the same size, and they actually fit perfectly. So now you have an indoor scene that has like a bunch of glassware of, potentially, obviously my transparency is not working at all. So it has a bunch of small things, and there's a wide variety of sorry, I need to stop moving around so much. There's a wide variety of different places different environments, that's the word, that this scene in particular supports. So this is and because it's CC licensed, it means we can distribute it freely. And this will be very important for making sure to be able to compare between engines, to be able to, have that friendly competition about performance, about can we each get better than the other, So yeah, this is a very promising future that will be coming soon. Okay, now next, we now have eGUI integrations in Ren 3. It's just gonna be eGUI. Look at this. You can change the color. Ain't that pretty? So this is rendered in Ren 3. This is eGUI rendered on top with thank you to either Sasa or Hassan Bank. I'm not sure how you pronounce your name. I PR'd the eGUI WGPU integration to make this work better. And yeah, so thank you to him. And ignore that validation error, it's fine. We also have ImGUI support. ImGUI was actually very interesting to tie together because ImGUI is a C library, and C libraries have lots of weird restrictions, like needing a bunch of thread local data and everything is not sent. So it really stressed my ability, the framework that I have, to be able to accommodate even something as crazy as ImGUI. Again, this is just the example scene, play around with it, whatever. I didn't know, there's no feedback, so it's not like we could change the scene, but it could work. This is all the same thing. Now, in particular, I would like to show you one feature of the render graph that I'm writing, and I'll show you some details of the I'll show you code. Point is, let's look at this eGUI example in RenderDoc. All right, get a frame there. So part of the shtick of my render graph is that it automatically combines render passes. So for example, each of these passes, so the shadow culling, the forward pre-pass, the forward opaque pass, these are all done using words. These are all just defined independently. They define their input, they define their output, and the render graph automatically combines them if they are compatible. So this way, it's very easy to define what you want to do. You can just say, oh, I want to write to the HDR color texture and write to the HDR depth texture. And then from there, you can the graph will automatically combine them. And the reason this combination is so important is that mobile in particular, every time you end a render pass, dumps to main memory. So you want to minimize the amount of time you dump to main memory. And as you can see here, tone mapping and eGUI are in fact defined in completely different files. But because they happen to both write to the surface texture, they were automatically combined into the same render pass, so to make sure it is as efficient as possible. In addition, the graph automatically detected that the depth texture actually is not used after this first pass, because I only have this one pass and that's it. So it automatically sets the store value. So you can set in a render pass if you store to memory or not. It automatically sets that to false, so that you can see here the depth store is don't care. And so that, especially on mobile, will vastly improve memory throughput. So lots of render doc, that's all cute. Here is an example. I'm going to try and fit this. Oops, that's not what I want to do. Try and fit this all on screen. This is the add to graph function for the tone mapping pass, which is currently also doing double duty as the copy from the HDR texture to the normal texture. In a future, there will be multiple different passes you can choose from, either doing tone mapping or not doing tone mapping, and just like copying it over and clipping if it's too high, stuff like that. So all you have to do is you take handles to render targets. I'll show you that in a minute. And then you just declare, hey, I'm going to use this as an input. I'm going to use this as an output. And I want a render pass that renders to this output. That's all you have to do. The rest is handled by the graph implementation itself. You can then, in this case, you also need, the graph can store multiple types of data. It can store a render target, it can store shadow targets, and it can just store arbitrary data. You can just put, say this piece of data is going to be the output from my pass. And then some pass down the line can take that as input, for example, this here. And it is using that piece of data that you defined earlier. And the graph will make sure everything happens in the correct order, and all of your data dependencies are respected. So you can take that as an input. These all give you handles, which you can then, inside of the function this is the function that puts it on the graph. This function in here is what actually happens when that node is being executed. So in this case, we just turn all of these handles back into concrete things. This is an actual concrete render pass. This is a concrete bind group, concrete texture view, etc. And through all of that, you can then do the normal execution you want to do. You can write arbitrary WGPU code. You don't have to necessarily, if you don't want to use a render pass, you don't have to. You can I'll just give you an encoder. You will just do whatever you please. Have custom data in, custom data out. Does not matter. This is the core of the extensibility behind Ren 3. And over time, we're going to be evolving this to make this even easier to use. As you can see in here, it's just a simple, make a bind group. I have a little temporary pool that helps with lifetimes because, as people probably know, WGPU and render passes, lifetimes are a bit of a mess. So you can just put something into this temporary pool, which is backed by bump allo. And it will just automatically extend the lifetime long enough to live on this render pass. So I believe this is sound. There is a bunch of unsafe in here in the implementation, but I have every reason to believe it's correct. Any places that you could possibly escape and get some sort of UB, there's runtime checks to make sure that doesn't happen. Very cheap runtime checks, mind you. And finally, I just want to show how this all comes together. So when you're making a render graph, this is the default render graph. This is what is used whenever you just want to render. And you basically just, I build up, because I render each bit of transparency different, I render opaque, cutout, and blend. And I put all I declare all of the data values I need. I need a pre-cull buffer, I need a shadow culling buffer, and I need a pre-cull, which is like the input data to the culling. Then I have the results of shadow culling, and I need one per shadow map if there's multiple. And then you have the result of normal culling for the normal camera. And then you just go through and you declare that, okay, I'm going to add pre-culling to the graph. I'm going to add the uniform bind group creation to the graph. And you just pass in these data handles, and these have declared that handle as input or output, depending on what it's doing, and you just build up the graph as you go. One particularly useful thing is that the surface texture you can just arbitrarily summon at any one time. So, for example, the tone mapping uses the surface texture, but for example, the eHui example doesn't actually modify the default render graph. The eGUI example, just later on, down here, oops, that's the wrong eGUI. That's the right eGUI. All it does is it adds the default render graph, gets the surface texture again, and because the surface texture is always the same, it will just automatically combine those. So the implementation of render passes and which is a very performance centric thing, is completely detached from how you declare it in your code. So you can declare it however fits your style of programming best and whatever you need, and then just let the graph handle the merging. You just need to make sure they're in the right order so that they can be merged. And this sort of like global merging technique is really useful when dealing with GPU stuff. Yeah, so that's about it for the show and tell portion of this. Let me go back in here. I just have a few shout outs and then I'll shut up. As always, links in here. I can put them in the thing. We have a matrix, we have a Discord. They're both mirrored to each other, so you can choose whichever one you like best. I forgot to put the rest of the name there. So finally, some shout outs for people who have been helping out a lot. Setfit22 has been helping with, has been looking into using Rend 3 and giving me a lot of great feedback about how the API works, how the API could be more flexible. Xeric 5 is working on a thing that is on a particular platform that I do not have, and we've been debugging on that platform, and has been an amazing help because that would not have been possible if they weren't as willing to help out. I have one more shout out whose username I forgot, but I remember their icon.
While you're checking that out, yeah, it's cool seeing all the people help out with this, and I know Setser22 in particular. They tend to contribute to or not contribute. They're working on a game called The Process, which is in Godot Rust, which I'm very interested in potentially seeing at a later meetup sometime. No
Nice.
Swad.
Yes, and No Swad, who has also been using Run 3, giving me feedback. It's all very, very helpful. And giving me repro cases for bugs, which has been really helpful. So if you want to help out, we have tons of stuff to do, the endless list of stuff. Come to the Matrix or Discord and help out. Other than that, I'm finished.
All right. Since our agenda is so full today, I think I'm going to get you to answer questions in chat. But it's always great seeing Ren 3, and I think definitely excited for when 0.3 drops, and we can see what's coming up next.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
All right, so next up we are back with Aklisma, who is going to talk to us about rafx, and this is it's been a few months since we've seen a rafx update, so I'm super excited to hear how it's going.
Hello everyone, I've got a bunch of things to show, so I'm going to get right into it. The first thing that I've been working on is fixing, I found a bunch of bugs in just the PBR shader in general. So after fixing a few things, normal handling mostly, this is a comparison of Blender and rafx. It's just a single light source with no MSA or multi-sampling, no ambient light. So it's not the prettiest picture, but it's a good way to compare the two and make sure that the lighting is semi-accurate to what you would get in Blender. The next thing is auto exposure. So auto exposure, it's an effect where when, depending on the brightness of the scene, it will adjust how bright the how much to lift the or reduce the color values of your render. So here's a fly through. You're going to see it's going to flip between a few different views. One is a blue and red view that'll show how bright, like where the color values go past 1.0. Hit play. So you can see here, there's some bloom. You see that red, those red spots there? That's where the color value blows past 1. And so tone mapping does is it adjusts the coloring to where you get a good visually appealing view. In the top right there, this is if tone mapping was off. Obviously, you could just crank the lights up, but having good tone mapping and adjusting the exposure based on the lights themselves is an artist-friendly thing to do. Because you can imagine if you've got sun outside and then you have an indoor scene, the difference in how bright the light is so much that it's really hard to communicate that without some sort of like transition where you can kind of see that your eyes, like your pupil dilates and you can see the exposure changing. So I'll let this finish. I'll run through one more video of this. This is another scene. It's a little easier, I think, to see how when you go into a bright area, it'll duck the lighting values down. And then when you come back to a darker area, it brings the levels back up. So the way this is working, there's a compute shader and it does a histogram of the scene for brightness values, and it decides based on where, say, like 5%, like if you think of a percentile, like 5% darkest, 95% brightest, it adjusts the levels of where that linear portion of the tone mapping should be. So I'll just run this one more time and we can move on. So here's where it ducks the values, and then we get into this darker area and it gets a bit brighter. And this is that histogram I mentioned. So some additional stuff. We have real HDR support. It's very difficult to show this in a meaningful way with screenshots. This is a photo from my cell phone, and on the left is a non-HDR display, and on the right is an HDR display. You can even see some real life bloom in there in this near the lights, kind of is ghosting there. That's not actually part of the render. That's the camera. As far as device support, most Apple's devices with a P3 screen are supported. It's actually really interesting. HDR, it's not just dependent on how bright the screen can get. It's also dependent on what your brightness settings is. So like if you reduce the brightness of your screen really low, you can actually get an HDR effect out of a non-HDR screen, especially if you're in a dark room. And Apple devices in particular, a lot of them, they know the brightness of the screens, the setting of the brightness of the screen, and they have a light sensor, so they can actually detect a case where it can kind of fake HDR, even if they don't even advertise that the screen is HDR. A lot of cell phones fall into that range. Like even several-year-old iPhones have 600 nit plus screens. So if you're in a dark place and you have a darker like you don't have your screen full brightness, it can actually give a pretty decent HDR effect, and it'll fake it by reducing the white point of the screen and then increasing the brightness of the backlight, and you can see in the operating system how it moves that white point down if you open like a photo from your photo album. Apple has really good handling for color and really good handling for HDR. As far as Vulkan support, I don't have a device that I can test this with myself, but if you have this Surface 16-bit sign float and extended sRGB, then it should work. But it's tough to test without a hardware for that. So NDF filtering, this was another interesting one. This is the lighting equation for most modern PBR, and this part of it right here is kind of a troublemaker. It's not a 0 to 1 value. It can be really high, especially if you have a smooth surface. So if you were to just naively use the output of this and then put it through Bloom, which Bloom is going to cause like a blurring effect around a bright pixel. What you'll have happen is like one single pixel will be a value of like 1,000 or several thousand, surrounded by other pixels that are like less than 1. And so the blurring will take that and blow it up and make this flickering thing, because that super bright pixel is not temporally stable. So to fix that, you kind of need to do some sort of filtering. Graphics does 2 filters. The first one, this is a new one. It's based on a paper. I'll give links to the paper in a second. I'm hoping this will come through on Discord, but compression may make it hard to see. So what you'll see is I'll move the camera to just kind of, and you'll see a bunch of flickering, and then I'll turn it off or turn the filtering on, and then move the camera again, and you should see less flickering. But I don't know if it's going to come through with compression. So let's give it a try. So that's with the flickering, and that's without the flickering. That's with and without. So the second one has the filtering turned on. Yeah, it should be in this area right here. It's pretty terrible.
It's coming through on Twitch quite well. So yeah, that looks pretty good.
Oh, that's great. Cool. So and then here's another scene or another view. The same thing. This is with Bloom. You can see how there's like a bunch of spots that pop in with this filtering turned off, and now the filtering's turned on, and most of the spots are cleaned up. This doesn't include the filtering that happens on Bloom itself. So this pass is just on NDF, and then there's a second pass on Bloom where the Bloom it samples more than 1 pixel to decide where to do where to start causing the blurring that Bloom does. I'll go into more of this in the chat if anyone has questions. So this filtering method, it kind of looks for edges, things that are curved, and this render kind of shows where that would take effect, mostly on the edges of things. So it's actually super easy to implement. The entire code for it is on this slide. You just run your normal through it with the roughness beforehand and a little bit of math, and you get it fixed. The links for these papers are here, and I'll just drop these in the chat right now. So if anyone wants to look at these later, you can look at them. And I guess I could just copy paste this too. Cool. So additionally, found some really nice optimization for the metal backend. This is a frame capture before the optimization, and you can see this is taking about 35 milliseconds to draw. It kind of hurts. And the problem is here, this build bytes. So this is kind of like virtual memory on the GPU. You don't want to spill bytes. And the fix is this. I do the GLSL. I write shaders in GLSL, and then I translate them with spur of cross, which makes MSL, or metal shading language. The shader that spur of cross produced in this case was not efficient, and this is kind of showing the change. It's pretty superficial, really. Instead of passing, you can see here it's taking a single struct, passing several members by reference through a bunch of functions, and then it uses them here. And the only change is to just pass the whole struct, and then in this function, actually access the member here. So the result of this is a massive speed up, about 5 times, so 35 milliseconds to 7.5 milliseconds, and no more spilling. So yeah, it was. I see in the chat there's a question. I compiled the shader, it wasn't optimized enough. Yeah, it was just so much slower than Vulkan, and it shouldn't be. So it was pretty obvious when I looked at the shader when they're spilling like that that was a definite problem. And yeah, another thing you can notice here, runtime shader instruction cost. So much of it's spent in memory and load. And afterwards, now it's been on the ALU, which is doing actual useful math, which is much better. So at this point, you can see also on the frame, the main problems I have are shadow maps are expensive because point light shadow maps, point lights are 6 shadow maps and it adds up. And then the bloom, I'm doing a fairly naive and optimal bloom pass, but the bloom should be easier to fix. The shadows is going to be an adventure. So the final thing I wanted to show is DDS texture support. I think it stands for Direct Draw Surface, and then show some first renders from the bistro scene that that was mentioned previously. So it's using this crate. It worked pretty well. And here's a render using of the bistro scene, and this is it in Blender. So you can see it's getting pretty close. The main difference here is that I don't have transparency set up properly. So the vegetation doesn't look quite right, but most of the lighting is decent. Like it's getting there, and the scene could probably look a bit better if the lights were more carefully placed. But yeah, it is definitely cursed vegetation. You can see here's what it should look like. And this is a darker render of it with just light on the inside. And this is the inside. We have lots of small meshes. Yes, point lights go burr. Exactly. So that's it for me. I did want to shout out Carl Bergstrom. His name is KAE. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. He's had a lot of really good comments and been looking at some of the tone mapping and Bloom quite closely. And I think he'll have some stuff to show in the future with it. But yeah, this is where you can get that demo scene. And I think that's it for me. If there's any questions or we can move on, it's fine.
All right. Yeah, it's super cool seeing, I think, just like all the updates. And I also really like that walkthrough of how you're doing the tone mapping for like different lighting levels, because this is always something I've like thought about in video games, how like video games will like accomplish this, and like it is great to have 4 different lighting changes, but I've never thought about what the process behind it is. So that was pretty cool to see. Yeah, I think I'm also super happy with like this bistro idea where different engines can kind of show off where they're at with this pretty standard sort of just area. And so I'm excited to see where this can go in the next few months.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of room for collaboration because, so for example, I've been hitting some of the same problems that I'm not sure how to say the name, is CW Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hitting some of the same problems he's hitting, and so for example, the normals, we both ran into the issue that the textures that have the normals have they it's a DXT5 texture, so it just includes a red green channel, no blue channel.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we both, I think, we're processing normal textures was we assume there's a Z, which is a blue channel, but it's an easy fix, but
Yeah.
you know, we both hit it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to share ideas and how
Yeah.
we approach the problem.
Absolutely. And I think I like that idea a lot of if this is something that multiple engines can come together and work on. Like yeah, like having sort of this place where I'm thinking it would be cool to try and put something together on the game dev working group to have this available for people to kind of see where the different engines are at, but also have that like communication line of who like how you can talk to each other about working on stuff. So yeah, super cool. I think I'll probably leave questions to the chat that you can reply to, just because we still have a few other people to go through today. But yeah, thank you so much for coming and showing off rafx.
Thanks.
Okay, so next up we have Graphite. Keevan's going to be giving us an update on what's been going on.
Yeah, all right. So this is the update for the end of Sprint 9, and we are starting it with Sprint 10 today. So really briefly, what is Graphite, if you're unfamiliar, if you have not been tuning in for past weeks or past months. Graphite is an in-development graphics editor. It's basically something that could replace Photoshop and Inkscape and GIMP, basically all of your 2D tools that are used for vector and raster. And the goal is to make it much more versatile with a node-based procedural or non-destructive workflow. And basically what it is for people in the Rust community is that it's basically a visual programming language for chaining together Rust functions that are useful for graphics. And especially in the game dev community, that's very helpful for producing basically art pipelines and things that are useful for generating textures and generating any kind of 2D assets that are used either at runtime or during the production pipeline. So let's start out with some updates this month and a quick list. So we improved the way that the TypeScript is handling the front-end message bus, and basically we had a big factor that simplifies things, a refactor that simplifies things. Just for a bit of context, we use a web front end, and that connects to a WASM Rust backend. So that's why we're talking about TypeScript. And then we also have a significant improvement to the way that the CSS handles resizing of the window at very small screen sizes. Now everything properly shows a scroll bar where it should, instead of just overflowing the page. We have the document tab now showing an asterisk whenever you have unsaved work, and then if you save, the asterisk goes away, and then if you undo and redo, it shows up again and goes away again at the right times. And then also when you close the browser, if there is any unsaved work, so if there are any asterisks in the tabs that you have open, the browser window will actually warn you that you're trying to close and potentially lose work. And finally, we have an awesome new snapping system for aligning shapes with each other. And this is really helpful. This was one of the major 3 release blockers for the alpha version. So let's go ahead and show some of these now. Okay, so if we decrease the screen size significantly, let's see, how do we want to do this? I guess if I use this feature, now I can resize the window. Here we are. Apparently it really wants it to be small. Okay. Let's just do it like this. Use my messy desktop background. Here, so we're going to resize, and now the toolbar is, or the tool shelf is showing a scroll bar here. And then also, if we quickly add a bunch of tabs, you can go to full screen mode to add tabs, and that way the browser does not intercept your Control-N key. So now we have a bunch of tabs, and I can use the horizontal scroll bar, or click and drag the scroll bar, or use the vertical scroll bar as well as in the vertical scroll wheel or the horizontal scroll wheel, or drag the scroll bar. And then same for this bar here, showing all of the options. This one's called the options bar. And then of course, as I showed here, the toolbar. So you can get really small with this, and it handles it relatively well. I think we have maybe a little bit of a horizontal limitation, but yeah, I think that's probably smaller than anyone's ever going to need to actually get the application to be. So that's very helpful. It does not cause the application to get funky sizes and things. We also had, let's see, we had the save. So if I start making changes, and actually I'm gonna reopen that. So we have, so now we have an asterisk here on the tab. And if we open a new one, this one does not have an asterisk, but now I make a new shape and it has an asterisk. And I move it. And if I hit Control Z twice, the asterisk goes away. And if I redo, the asterisk comes back. And then if I save it, I just hit Control S and then didn't end up actually saving it to the desktop, but I could have. And then the asterisk goes away. And now if I Control Z and then the asterisk returns, and if I redo again, then the asterisk goes away again. And now finally, if I decide to close the page by by clicking on the X, then it's going to warn me that I have unsafe work, and I can hit cancel and actually save my work. And then if I save the work for both of these tabs, then if I close it, it just closes properly. And then the final thing to show is the awesome snapping system. So if we have an existing shape, and then we are going to make a new shape, we'll make an ellipse here. It's going to snap to that pixel increment there. So now we have a vertical alignment, and now we also have an alignment with the horizontal corner. And then we can also align, for example, the center here. So this one's aligned along the center axis of the ellipse, and then I can also align with the vertical axis. So basically, you can align with various shapes, center and sides. And then also that works during the actual creation of shapes. So if we go and align here, now we have two corners nicely butting up. And if we go and click on the not the magnifying glass, on the magnet icon and disable snapping, now we can move very close to the corners, and snapping is not taking action, so it's not actually overwriting the position you might want if you want to be close but not actually snapping. And I believe that is all of the features that I can demo today. So now a quick update on the status of the alpha launch, which is basically still targeting now that we've updated our plans, it's targeting a launch in early January, hopefully before or at the next Rust Gamedev Meetup. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We have finished up the layer snapping, which is one of the 3 release blocking features. So now we have to do the properties panel and the pen tool and basically Bezier curve editing. And I have the next 3 weeks off school, so I will be working nonstop on all of that. If you are available to contribute, please join the project, and that will make it so we can hopefully release actually in early January. I'd also like to thank mfish33 on GitHub for joining us, and his contributions have been very helpful. And finally, time for some questions. But by the way, please star Graphite on GitHub. The stars have been increasing steadily, and it's also hoping that we can get to 1,000 before we launch. So if you don't mind starting the project on GitHub, that would be awesome. Just go to www.graphite.design, and that will redirect you right now to GitHub, and give that a star. Thank you. So any questions?
Hello. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I think that the best thing that we can hear as students is 3 weeks of free time to work on our projects. It's like a lot of fun.
Yes.
As far as I can see, I don't think there's any questions just yet in chat. I'm thinking for myself. So early January, you're going to be doing sort of like an alpha release. And so you're gonna have something that like you can ship out. Are you looking to do anything in terms of either like advertising, like putting YouTube videos together? Because I think it'd be really cool to see like or I mean even another fun one would be like another contest to see what people can make. Like I think there's some really fun stuff there.
Oh yeah, we should actually do more contests. We did several of those in the past, and they've had some awesome artwork. So how about I do an impromptu announcement of the last contest before alpha? If you want to join our Discord server, which you can get to by going to either discord.graphite.design, and that will redirect you to the README, which has a link to our GitHub. Do that, and then we will have in the next, let's say, 1 week, if you make some artwork in Graphite, we will pick a winner and tweet that out on our Twitter account. And then yes, when it actually comes to the release, basically the goal is to release the website and have like a nice web presence, and then post it on various subreddits and other internet communities that would probably find that Graphite is relevant to their interests, and just get the word out basically, and hopefully get drum up some interested people who actually want to contribute, and continue getting the momentum rolling. I've definitely noticed in the past month we've definitely gotten momentum back up and running, and I think it can only continue growing from here. So getting the
Yeah.
release out, kind of just getting an actual website, and getting the product to a place where we are happy with, it being moderately useful for some basic vector editing things. Certainly isn't going to replace more in-depth vector editors quite yet, but hopefully it will in the near future, especially once we move on to our next milestone goal, which is actually implementing the node-based system for all of the non-destructive kind of procedural way of actually editing vector shapes. So that will be exciting. But yeah, we're just working at the moment on getting the release out in early January, if all goes to plan.
Yeah, awesome. It's just super cool to hear. I think like when I tell people about Graphite, first of all, people don't understand that like it's in the browser and it just works and you can go to it and play with it and stuff like that. But like there's definitely like when someone goes and sees it and it's like they think along the lines of like you think you got Google Drive, you got like Figma, but then this idea that you can have like this full editor that just loads up almost instantly and feels native and everything is like something that a lot of people wouldn't have experienced before. So awesome, very awesome stuff to be seeing.
Yeah, and the other cool part would be the fact that it's also going to have collaborative editing, so you can actually edit in real time with other people, just like Google Docs. So it's kind of the same sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so very excited for this release. And so I think with that we'll move on to the next talk. So thank you so much, Kevin, for coming out this month, and I'm excited to see how it's going next month.
Thank you.
Say Kira.
All right, so welcome back, everybody. We are here with Tessalode, who is going to be talking to us about AetherBeats and Kira.
All right. So, yeah, 2 projects. What the heck are they? We're going to start with AetherBeats. So this is a synesthetic twin-stick shoot 'em up, which is a lot of words, but essentially it's a shooter in the vein of Geometry Wars. But it's not just trying to be a shooter, it's also trying to be an aesthetically interesting, like audio-visual kind of toy. And I think one of the most notable things about it is that it generates music while you're playing the game. So, I'm going to show the game. Turn on your sound so that you can hear the music and stuff going on. I'll just play a few levels of this. So,
I
can
don't
move
think
around.
audio's coming through, unfortunately.
Audio's not coming through, like on my end, or
So I'm not hearing it on Discord. So what?
I think it's muted by default, isn't it?
No. If you go and share the actual application, then I think it should. But if you switch between applications, then it can be a bit difficult.
Ah, okay.
But yeah, if you want to give that a go.
Yeah. All right. Let me switch this over really quick. Share.
So yeah, I think.
Game.
Okay. Is there audio right now? Hey, yeah. Okay, perfect. I like this.
Cool. All right. So, oh, getting some lag. Oh God. Oh, is it flickering for you all? How does it
Not
look
too
like
much.
everybody else's end?
It looks pretty good, I think.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, it
then
looks
I'll
good
just
for
keep
us.
going because I can still play it. So. I died. I'm bad at my own game. I died again. Alright, I'm gonna skip ahead to one of the later levels. Let's see, let's do this. So that's what the game looks like. If you want to see what the boss fight looks like, you'll have to play test it, which I'll tell you about later. So, let me switch back to the browser. All right, can you see my browser screen again?
I think I can see. Oh yeah, this is browser. Yeah.
Yep. So, that's AetherBeats. So you might be wondering, how am I generating all this music in real time? And it's actually a very simple system. It seems really magical, but it's not. Basically, first you just wait for anything to happen. So in my case, I'm queuing up sounds when you shoot bullets, or like when you kill an enemy, or when you collect a pickup. So we're waiting for some kind of gameplay event, and then we just pick a random sound that's designated for that event. And all of the sounds are designed to work well together. They're all in the same key, and they all sound nice together. And then we just wait for the next musically opportune moment to play the sound. So generally we're playing it on a 16th note, like just the next 16th note. There's a couple triggers that are a little bit more complicated, but we're just waiting for a good time to play the sound. And it works pretty well. I did not invent this system. This is used by all the great Tetsuya Mitsugushi games. Not all of them, but it's used by Rez, and it's used by Tetris Effect, which is the more recent one. So, thing is, playing the sound of the next 16th note, that's not actually trivial, and it's, so why is it hard? One reason is you can't just wait until the event happens and then wait until the time you want to play the sound and play it. Because by the time that musical moment has arrived in real time, it's already too late to play the sound because, your game's running at 60 frames per second. So it's, your next frame is not going to land exactly on the beat. And you can hear the timing issue. Like it's a big enough timing gap that it's audibly wrong. Plus, there's also a delay between when you tell the audio thread to do something and when it'll actually get that message and do it, and you'll hear it. So you have to queue up the sound ahead of time. And unfortunately, all of the open source audio libraries I've seen don't have that feature because it's pretty niche. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is one, but I've looked around and I haven't seen much. I was originally making this game in Love, and Love uses OpenAL. I don't think OpenAL has this feature. I don't think most of them do. I believe Fmod has a way to do things like this, but that's not open source, right? So Let's talk about the next project, which is Kira. What is Kira? It's an open source audio library that lets you do that kind of thing. So I want to talk about a couple of approaches I've taken to queuing up sounds and playing them like with music. Just for, if you're trying to do something similar at any point, maybe you can learn from this. So in version 0.1 to 0.5, I had a thing called sequences, and they are scripts that run on the audio thread. So you create it from your gameplay code, you send it to the audio thread, and then the audio thread will play the sounds and just do the things when you told it to. And you can also use metronomes as a timing source, so you can wait for a certain metronome tick, or you can wait for a certain amount of time in metronome time before doing something. And sequences can also emit events which you can receive from your gameplay code, and then that's how you can respond to a musical moment in your game. So here's an example of one of the sequences I used, which is this is for playing the respawn sound and also, just timing things when the player dies and respawns. So first it waits for the beginning of the measure to start the respawn animation, and then it'll emit that event so that the gameplay code can start the respawn animation. And then it plays the respawn sound. It waits 3 beats. It increases this like filter effect, so you can, if you heard earlier, whenever I died, like all the other sounds would just go like, and then you like come back up like, so that's what the set parameter is for. And then waits 1 beat, and then it emits player spawn. So there's both good and bad things about the system. The good thing is that it works pretty well for AetherBeats. It made it possible for me to make the game. So that's pretty cool. Problem is, I want this to be a library that's generally useful for a lot of people. And that is a really overkill API for most people, because most people aren't making AetherBeats. They might want to like occasionally time sounds accurately, but it's not something that people are usually doing. And for the next version of Kira, I really wanted to like pare it down to the essentials and like clean up the parts of the API that weren't pulling their weight. So for Kira 0.6, I have a new system which is much simpler. It's just a clock system, which is similar to metronomes from the previous versions, but it's just a timing source that ticks upwards. So you set the interval, and then it's just got like a U64 that increases. And then the nice thing is you can set a sound to start playing when a tick is reached, and you can set tweens to start when a tick is reached. So that covers like pretty much every use case for a clock. You can start sounds, you can change the volume of sound, you can change parameters, you can do all sorts of things at the start of a clock tick. So, and then you just do the scripting system yourself from gameplay code. There's some nuance to how you have to do that, but the thing that I just showed is using the new clock system, and it's working really well. So, yep, you can just use some example code. You tell the sound to play, and you just set the start time, and that's about it. So, there's other cool things I'm doing in Kira 0.6. First of all, I have decoupled Kira from the audio backend. Previous versions were using CPAL under the hood, and this one is not. You can just swap in any backend you want, and the CPAL backend is its own crate. So that should be pretty solid improvement in general. I have a sound trait. So previously, Kira had 2 kinds of sounds. It just had static sounds, which are just like chunks of audio data, and arrangements, which let you like splice together different sounds into a larger sound. But those were hard coded in, and there wasn't a lot of facilities for doing anything else. There was audio streams, but it was kind of like a second class citizen. So now everything is just implemented in terms of a sound trait, and it should be a lot more versatile. And I also have streaming sounds. So that is something that people have brought up. When you have a longer sound, you don't really want to load it all into memory because it takes a lot of memory. So I have implemented streaming sounds with the help of Symphonia, which is a pretty nice library for loading sounds. So I'm hoping that that's like a good ecosystem to invest into. Um, so I removed some features which, maybe doesn't sound like an improvement, but they weren't that good. And I'd rather have a small number of really good features than a larger number of eh. And then also the code base is just a lot better. Um, I'm using more appropriate data structures for storing things, which is like a whole other thing I could talk about. And I kind of want to like write an article on it or something because I think it's probably useful to somebody out there. So yeah, just much better code. So talking about what's next for Kira, I'm gonna keep on working on the API. I'm currently rethinking how parameters work because I think the current way is a little bit cumbersome for common use cases. So trying to work on that. Spatial audio. I don't make 3D games myself, which is why it wasn't a high priority for me. But it seems like a lot of people do care about spatial audio, and it sounds like an interesting challenge to try to implement. So I'm planning on at least giving it a shot, and I could use any expertise that people want to offer, because that is not my area of expertise. A C API. So I'm envisioning this as a general purpose audio library that you could use for any kind of game, not just ones written in Rust. So I would like to expose the bindings. Is that what you call it? I'm not sure if that's how you say it, but that way you could like write bindings for any other language. As for what's next on AetherBeats, development's been a little slow because I keep working on Kira. I said I was going to pronounce it Kyra before we started, and I'm pronouncing it Kira anyway. Yeah, so yeah, AetherBeats is going well. I want to get it to the point where I can pitch it to publishers. And I think it could use some more gameplay tweaks before I attempt that and more play testing. But like I said, I keep working on the audio library instead. So, if you want to try beta 0 of Kira 0.6, it's published, so you should try it. And I could really use feedback on the design and just anything, really. I would love to get more help working on this because I think it could be pretty useful. And ping me on Discord if you want to playtest the game. I don't need a ton of playtesters right now, but I will need them in general in the future. So, yeah, feel free to contact me about that. And that's all I got. I will answer questions in the chat.
Perfect. I have to say, seeing the sort of like AetherBeats being played, it's amazing how smooth it is and how cohesive it is with the audio, in the sense that like whenever I see like procedurally generated audio games, I always think of the fact that like how difficult it is to make sounds sound good together, and then also how to cue them up. And like you described this like the crate like Kira that really solves this problem so elegantly. And so I'm definitely gonna reach out to you to see if I can help with the playtest, just because this looks like a game that like I would love to play, I would love to experience. But then also I was thinking Rust and Arts just happened last week. It was like a conference about art things that are going on in Rust, and so lots of people were talking about like procedural like image generation stuff with Nanu. I gave a presentation on Valorant, but it would have been so cool to see your work there. So I've already messaged the organizers so they can reach out to you for next time.
Oh, dang. Okay. Yeah, I will say, like, again, I don't want to like take too much credit for this system because this was heavily inspired by Rez, which came out like that was like a PS2 and Dreamcast game. Really like Tetsuya Mitsuguchi is a pretty huge inspiration for me. But it's also, you're right, like it takes some musical know-how to get all the sounds working well together. But once you do and you have that system of playing sounds like on the grid, it really like it's pretty magical. It feels like a much more complicated system than it is. which
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
Well, absolutely, because that's what like pulls you into like the flow state of the game is like as you're
Mhm.
moving around, as you're as you are doing stuff, the game is being an extension of you because it's reacting to what you're doing. And so I think that
Exactly.
yeah,
And
that was
that's
super cool to see.
what differentiates this kind of music game from, other music games. Like, there's shooters out there where it tries to like generate the level design based on like an MP3 file you put in.
Yeah,
Um, but it doesn't envelop you in like what you're doing like
exactly.
this does.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, I'm super excited to see where this goes in the next few months. So definitely make sure that you're writing in the game dev newsletter because it'd be super cool to see how the progress is coming in. Also, I'd love to see you back next month. But yeah, we can push questions over into the chat, and we will be
mhm.
back in just a few minutes with Acton. All right. So next up, we have Acton here, who's going to be giving us an update on apparently not Cosmic Verge. So let's see what that's about.
Yeah. If people remember me, I've been presenting here since about March of this year, I think, or either February or March. I don't remember off the top of my head, honestly. And it's been about Cosmic Verge the whole time, but I haven't actually shown off Cosmic Verge since the very first meetup. So what is Cosmic Verge? It is now on hold. The reality is that once I got a second contributor, Dax Petta, he and I envisioned a lot of interesting ways to try to build an architecture to try to solve really complicated problems, how we could scale such a potential MMO game. And over the last few months, I just kind of realized that I can't really in good faith keep saying that I'm actually working on the game. Like I still want to develop the concept of the game, but the reality is BonsaiDB and GUI are such large projects that it's not really a good faith thing to keep showing up here and say, hey, I'm working on an MMO, and then not actually work on an MMO for 9 months, a year, probably 2 years, who knows. So I'm going to be showing off what we're actually building and talk to you about why, if you're prototyping a game, why you might want to actually consider using BonsaiDB for your data storage as well as potentially networking. So what is BonsaiDB? At its core, it's an ACID compliant transactional database, and it's written purely in Rust. The tagline that I've tried to start, working on is it's a database that grows with you. You can use it as local-only storage, just like SQLite, where there's no networking or anything. You get almost all the features except for multi-user currently. And then when you add the client server, you actually get multi-user, permission system, and a bunch of other stuffs. And we're going to be eventually adding read replicas as well as being able to switch into a full quorum-based cluster. The goal of it is to be very feature rich, which kind of makes it a jack of all trades and master of none to some extent. But we're trying to be really intelligent about how we design each feature too, such that even though it's not necessarily going to be the absolute best at any one particular thing, the combination of the whole system should still be very compelling for certain types of users. So that's kind of what the goal of what we're trying to do is, bring something that solves so many of the problems that you might normally face with development. Some of the common ones are the pub sub when you're dealing with networking and wanting to communicate between multiple sets of clients and not have to really directly link them together. Job queuing, which is something that we don't have yet, is something that is very common to almost every server backend. And I just want a database that you can install that is very simple, can run local without having to have any extra dependencies, but can also scale you all the way up to being a distributed cluster. So why shouldn't you use BonsaiDB? It's not even alpha yet, and the demo that I'm going to be showing off took me 8.5 hours to develop, and I ran into multiple bugs on the way. Not with only one with BonsaiDB itself, but it's still alpha. So at this stage, basically, I only want people who are prepared to lose data. You shouldn't actually lose data in theory, but things change. I don't have a reliable backup replication strategy yet. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't be touching this right now. And one of the others is that we need more contributors for this to really, get to the point that we can get clustering anytime soon. And so, it's either going to be a very long time before it becomes something that has all the features that I mentioned, or, it's going to need additional contributors. So it's probably too early for most people, but, people who are making, one-off games and trying stuff, I would love for you guys to try it out. So why would you? Well, it's pure Rust. It simplifies deployment a lot. Already talked about that. Development. Deployment, it's very easy to deploy. It's when you think about trying to deploy a highly available Redis or Postgres setup to handle some of these problems, it gets really complicated. And I don't technically have the highly available setup yet, but I'm planning on making that as simple as possible. And then same with when you actually want to get to the point that you scale it with cluster and everything. I want sharding to be automatic and taken care of for you. You just pick your storage classes after you configure them, and you're good to go. And then at the end of the day, BonsaiDB is not SQL. It's document based. And so if you are really a fan of SQL and are not happy with certain approaches that we've decided to take that I would consider just an opinionated approach, then you shouldn't use BonsaiDB, and that's okay. And then the other half that I'm going to be showing off today is GUI, which is a very early in development graphical user interface framework. And the niche that we want to solve is partly being able to build database-driven applications that work both in the browser as well as natively. And to me, working in the browser doesn't mean just rendering your graphics calls in the browser, because you lose all accessibility with screen readers and all sorts of other benefits that browsers bring you. And there's a valid reason to potentially ship only browser-based apps right now, given the state of how good accessibility is there compared to some of the state of desktop development currently, especially cross-platform. So our goal is to try to bring accessibility across the entire framework, but that's going to be a very, very long-term project for bringing that to native. And hopefully that's going to be partly building up the ecosystem of Rust such that we can have good accessibility APIs for anyone who's writing a custom engine. So again, it's not really ready for prime time, but it's what I'm going to be showing off today. So I recorded the creation of the demo I'm about to show off in its entirety. It took me 8.5 hours. It's going to take YouTube probably just as long to process the videos, but I'm going to be posting the video and after I have a chance to put some chapter markers and stuff in place. And what this is meant to show off is how you can use BonsaiDB to build a game. Now, at the end of the day, what you're going to see is just buttons on a screen, nothing really fancy, but hopefully it'll show off some of the really powerful features that we've built into BonsaiDB so forth. And the biggest part is that everything is being handled by BonsaiDB from a networking perspective. So that includes TLS automatic acquisition of certificates, all the way down to the quick-based protocol for our native client. So that's where I'm supposed to actually show the demo. So you can actually come along and play along if you want as well. I'm going to paste this in here, and I'm going to click play in your browser. And this is a game theory game where you're supposed to be in the minority, essentially. So people who go out, if there's more than 50% of people that go out, they will not have a good time. And the people who stay in will always gravitate towards 50% happiness. And so the goal is just to try to be as happy as possible. And so there are definitely bugs and limitations as to how this currently works. But hopefully as people start joining, we'll see some bigger numbers, and you can essentially set a value for whether or not you're going to go in or stay out. And you can also pick your tell, which allows you to lie about it. So one of the bugs right now that I just never got around to implementing is that you don't get notified when a round starts if you're just sitting there idle. So you have to keep clicking the button to see anyone else playing. And that means right now we have 3-4 people joining, 5, so we're getting some more people. But that is basically the demo, and I'm not going to make you guys watch this very boring game for very long. So that video that I'm creating will give an overview of, not just an overview, the entire creation of that particular demo. Actually, I guess one thing I wanted to show off is the main client file can run is purely written in Rust, and if we look for WASM in this file, there's only one location we're doing it, which is what the connection string is to connect to the client. So that's the goal of GUI, and this is showing that it actually works. We still are very early in development with GUI itself, but it's coming along. So BonsaiDB, the next thing we're going to be doing is releasing an alpha, which hopefully will be next week. The main repo has undergone significant changes since the last update, which was all the way back in May. We've released multiple new crates. One of the ones that I will point out is DeriveWhere. If you've ever needed to manually implement clone, debug, or some other traits where you have a generic parameter, but you don't want to force it to either be clone or debug, but when it does, you want it to automatically support it, or it's wrapped with an arc, for example, but the compiler is basically making you manually implement it. You can actually use DeriveWhere now to automatically derive those anyways. And then we've also been working in the ecosystem to, as we start building out those features, to improve support for various things. So we've done a bunch of updates, both with our own crates as well as those that are already out there. What's next for us? We're starting to try to actually build some momentum behind BonsaiDB. And so I'm going to be publishing monthly updates on BonsaiDB moving forward. I started with November, and the alpha release is going to essentially be this month's release as well. The working towards building a better roadmap, including like actually charting out where we're going with clustering, so that hopefully as we continue to say, hey, we're looking for contributors, there's going to be more and more options that are in the issue system already for people to come and explore and try to pitch in on. And then we're also still building kind of the basis of what Cosmic Verge would have been, and will eventually be based on if we actually get back to it, which is essentially an encrypted chat collaboration platform. So the group messaging that we would want in an MMO, we were going to start there, and we kind of think that could be a kind of standalone interesting project, and it's a pretty good demo of both BonsaiDB and GUI. So that's the current kind of focus. But again, primarily we're trying to build the platform itself, not necessarily the tangential project. That's more of like an example of what we're building. So and then here's some different links. So that's all I've got to show off today.
All right. Well, I mean, even if it's not directly related to the game, game dev oriented or like sort of like aligned game dev adjacent types of tech is still very cool kind of stuff. And I like especially sort of this idea of playing around with what kind of game can you make at scale to do to like handle like a lot of like questions sort of like this. And I was actually working on another project recently with a multi-agent system professor, and we are thinking along the lines of like what types of games can we make that test out like a massive group of people like doing some type of interaction with one another and seeing how they interact. And this definitely looks like a type of technology that can enable that. So yeah, it's I think very fun to see like where this side of game development can go as well, or like what problems can you solve with this. So yeah, very very exciting to see the changes. I'm not in the meetup chat right now. Okay, let's see if there's any questions here. I think there isn't too much. So what I'll probably do is I'll let you answer any questions in chat if you like, but yeah, I'm excited to see where this sort of like next direction of sorry, is it Khonsu Labs?
Yeah, Khonsu Labs.
Khonsu Labs, yeah, the next direction of where it goes. All right. Oops, daisy. All right. So finally, we have one more presentation today. We have Tog here to talk to us about Drone Target.
Yeah. So once again, hello everybody, and thank you for adding me last minute. I was meaning to present it last month, but I a bit messed it up, so I'm doing it this month. All right, the Drone Target. What it is? It's a small space team arcade game, which is basically started as a demo project for Dotrix engine. I assume that you've heard of it already. I believe Ilya was presenting it in the last meetup, so I'll be not talking much about Dotrix. I'll just basically show you the game, and it's which is still in very early stages, but I think it has some cool stuff, and which are first integration with Rapier. So this game is using some physics and simulating some physics. And the other thing is just showing, let's say, the latest features of the engine, like again, the demo for these latest features. So let me go into Studio Code and just show you the game. Okay, so just a second, it's on the wrong screen. Here it is. I hope you can see it. As I was saying, it's quite early stages, so don't mind the graphics. It doesn't look that nice, but you
I think
can
we're
already.
still on the. I think you're just sharing Chrome right now, or Firefox.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry for this.
No worries, no worries.
Okay, so I think now I should be sharing the entire screen.
You're good.
Okay, good. So here is the game. Again, as I was saying, don't mind the graphics. I didn't pay much attention to modeling yet. And by the way, I'm quite new to game dev in general, so I'm learning everything along the way, including the engine. I can try to go full screen. Oh, it's even working. So again, one of the cool stuff which I wanted to show that is the physics. Probably need to reset it. And as you can see that if you start collaborating with these, what I call drones, it works pretty nice. I'll probably do it like this. And this is done using Rapier. So yeah, here we go. Yeah, you see it's flying off, and then all of these are disappearing. It's again, the logic of the game itself is not yet programmed. So I was working on very basic stuff. So this was one feature which I think is cool. The other thing is, I don't know, you probably heard that Dotrix recently got the states, which is very simple but very powerful. You can see it in here that currently there are 2 states active, which allow to do this game reset very easily. So when you click reset button, everything gets reset, and it's just basically one line of code. So the game itself composed of different states, and if you want to reset it, you just throw initialization state, and everything got resets. I might show you a bit of code. Actually, surprisingly, the integration of Dotrix and Rapier was super easy. There is this module, and that's basically all the code, what you needed to do the integration. So it's very simple. And then there is, of course, a system, which is here that's called every frame, which does the simulations. And then once you have it set it up, it's very easy. You can for example, when you spawn the drone, you also add it to the physics engine. Again, just a few lines of code here as well. And as I was saying about the reset of the game, so these new states features, just one line of code, it pushes the new state, and it already knows how to set everything up. So basically, the basic initialization all is wrapped here, and you can do it like this one click of button. And that's pretty much it. So again, I'm not going into much details into Dotrix because I believe it's been shown before. Just wanted to present this small thing, and that's all from my side.
All right, I think this is super cool because yeah, we've definitely had like the previous discussions on Dotrix and everything. One second, let me just pull up. But it's always been like from the engine point of view. Dotrix. Yeah, Dotrix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That was basically the point of this, let's say, talk. I know it's not that much, but just to show basically a game, even it's simple, developing using the engine. And for me, this is like great learning. It was somewhat simple. You just open Dotrix example and you can start programming your stuff.
Yeah, and I think going through your code, like, so it's open on GitHub, so anybody can go and take a look. But it was like really cool seeing like how I guess like you had all of like the with sort of thing like to build everything together. So I'm definitely gonna go check that out later, because I know when I've been doing stuff with like Bevy, for example, like you take a similar approach for putting, I think, I don't remember what the term is in Bevy, but like systems or something like that together. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's ECS, and again, I think it's very nicely wrapped. And again, I'm talking about these states a lot because I didn't contribute to the development of this, but I somehow was interacting with Liao, and hey, it would be cool to have something like this. And then we kind of thought on it a bit together, and you see it looks quite neat. So you have some systems that run on this state, and that's basically it. So this turned out, as I said, very simple but very handy feature, and you can do a lot of cool stuff with this.
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up here on GitHub. Let me just get this loaded in.
Yep. The code is a bit messy, but feel free to reach me out. You can reach me either here or on Dotrix channel as well. Doesn't matter.
Perfect. Yeah, this is like a super cool kind of put together kind of thing. And I think as well, people say like Rust code always look like oh, my Rust code's not that good, but every time I look through Rust code, I'm like, dang, this is clean. And so maybe it's just like how Rust does things. But anyways, yeah, this is awesome to see. If you keep working on it, definitely come back next month and show us what's gone on.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, so that is it for this month of the Rust Gamedev Meetup. It was super cool seeing what everybody is working on. I think we definitely had a lot of different show and tell pieces. I think it was really cool seeing sort of like the engine comparisons at the beginning. Also super excited for what Graphite comes out with next month. AetherBeats was super cool. It was cool seeing like the new direction of where GUI and Bonsai DB is going, and I think it was awesome seeing Dotrix at previous meetups, and this month seeing a game made in Dotrix. So super cool stuff. As for announcements, the newsletter is out. I just released it yesterday. No, 2 days ago. Time flies when you're having fun. So go take a look at what people have been working on. If you have a game that you've been working on this month, if you are working on some game dev adjacent project or crate or blog post or whatever, definitely make sure it's in the newsletter next month. You can reach out to me on Discord if you want to know how to be a part of that. We also have so not fully planned just yet. I think we're looking at running the Rusty Jam in January at some point, and so keep an eye out for that. We'll figure out when a good time to do that is. Meeting is back. I didn't run any meetings for November. As far as I remember, I got super busy. I was trying to find an ideal time that would work for more of the leads of the working group, but I think what I'll just do is I'll try to make something that's consistent for myself. People can show up, and then once that gets consistent, then we can look at making it more accessible for people who would want to attend. Discussions on the working group repo. I haven't updated this, so bi-weekly meeting, I'll probably put more discussions up there. I did just open a discussion about the a potential engine repo in which we can kind of see where the different rendering engines built into Rust are. And so this is what Klizma and CW Fitzgerald were talking about. So head over to the Rust Gamedev working group repo and you can join in that discussion if you like. And see you next time. But actually, don't wait. There's not more. I just haven't updated these slides. And so we will see you in January in 2022 for the next Rust Gamedev Meetup.